I'm Anne De Jesus Ardina, and I'm the program director for both youth studies as well as Christian education at the Alliance Graduate School. So let me go to, uh-oh. Okay. And I am a baby boomer, so I'm not that techy.
It's okay.
I'll actually be turning 60 this year. This is my senior citizen year. Okay, what else?
Oh,
Yes, I'm looking forward to the freebies. of the card.
So do I, Anne. I turned 62, so I'm with you.
This year, this year. So
Yeah,
college?
actually, no, next year, May 23. So you're older than me. You're old.
I can feel it.
you don't look like 60 though.
My former students already have like kids, so I'm like a grandmother, literally. So as we always say at Alliance Graduate School, it's youth ministry for life. So that's our motto, YM4L. And that I coined that motto around 1997 when I first took my MA in youth ministry at Alliance Graduate School. And our first professor was, I don't know if you know him, Colin, or any of you have heard of Dr. Dan Jessen.
Yes.
He's you know him. Okay, so at that time, 1997, he was 60 years old. So we were like, oh. And if you know him, I hope one of these days he could join us. He's like, yes, 60 years old, but his energy is wow. It's
Oh,
really
bless you.
floating all over the place. So that inspired many of us. And I was the oldest one in that class. I was like 32 or 33 years old. The rest were like in the 20s, early 20s. And so that kind of encouraged us to be in youth ministry for life. So that has always been our motto at Alliance Graduate School. I thought this was going to be a bigger group, but anyway, when I ask a bigger group, I usually ask like make a survey how many became a born again Christian before the age of 25. So there's like a raise of hands, and you can do this in when you meet youth ministers, a gathering, just for curiosity's sake. How many became a Christian before 25? And they keep their hands up. 18. So those who are beyond 18 put their hands down. 14 and 10. And you'll be surprised, like starting with 25, before the age of 25, like almost half of the people there would have been born again Christian before the age of 25. And of course, the number gets less, like 18 and 14. But it's so interesting, like, before they're 25 years old, many of the born again Christians now had come to know Christ before they're 25. And here in the Philippines, I don't know about your respective denominations, but for the Alliance of the Philippines, our youth category is 12 up to, brace yourself, up to 40 years old, as long as you're single. Okay, that's our category, because we have like the young teens, and then we have the college age, high school, college, and then we have the young adults or young professionals. So that's all the way up to 40 years old. And especially now, since young people, young adults are getting married at later and later age, so that applies to them. So you will see that youth ministry is very, very relevant for the Philippines, for Asia, because many of us have come to know the Lord at this very young age and a very critical time. So why youth ministry for life? Because the youth are at the stage of their lives when they make critical. Alvan, I'm going straight to why why youth ministry, okay? And then I'll turn around to AGS. They're at the critical stage of their lives. They're making life-changing decisions, make or break decisions. First of all, of course, is who they're going to follow. Are they going to follow God or go the other way? And they're making decisions about their choice of college education, if they proceed to college, then their career, and then of course also for some, they're making a decision who their lifetime partner will be. So it's a very, very critical stage in their lives. And it would be good for us to be there. They are unprecedentedly influenced by youth culture. So it's not just in Western countries, but even in the Philippines and other parts of Asia. I go to Vietnam, I go to Laos and Thailand. to do also ministry. And when you ask them about almost anything about youth culture, it's like, you don't look at their skin, don't look at their eyes, don't look at their language and everything. It seems like there's like a global youth culture. Although, of course, we have our unique Filipino youth culture or other Asian culture, but you can see that they're very much influenced. So I was even thinking like, how did I say it before? They look Japanese, maybe some of them, this Asian youth. They talk Korean. They eat what's the maybe also Korean and Japanese food, but it's like this whole global youth culture. And of course, the West is also influencing, the Western youth culture is influencing our youth. And because the youth of this generation are what we call psychological orphans. This is Strawman was the one who said that about Merton Strawman, that young people, that was a survey done in the 80s, which is still relevant as I teach our students from year to year. They all agree that yes, whether it's the boomer generation, whether it's the Gen X, Y, Z, or Alpha, but when you talk about youth, more and more, especially in the Philippines, we have a lot of psychological orphans. And so the young people need soaps or significant other adult persons to journey with them. And that's that's us. And I'm going to be sharing also some resources. This is some plugins, shameless plugins we have here. I wrote a chapter in Global Youth Ministry, which is edited by Terry Linhart, who is also our visiting professor, and David Livermore. And when Terry first asked me to write a chapter to represent Southeast Asia, a textbook that's going to be used mostly in the US, I was thinking, at AGS, most of our books, if not all, are Western books. They come from the US, and then a few from Australia, and then Europe. And I was thinking, what can we teach them that they don't already know, right? Because we're learning from them. And so what is unique to Filipino youth that probably is not so much applicable to other youth? And I thought about the OFW phenomenon. Okay? So when we talk about the Philippines, we have OFW kids. There's one school that I was asked to give a seminar, and they were talking about OFW kids because 70% of that school population were OFW kids. Can you imagine that? When Terry first asked me, is that really an issue, OFW kids? Is that a big thing, like say in a typical youth group? So I asked my students, and surprisingly, like my students, like half of them were OFW kids growing up since the 80s and then the 90s. And they did say, they confirmed that yes, in their youth groups, there were about 50% or maybe even more OFW kids. And I call them the temporarily parentless generation. They're not parentless, but they're psychological orphans temporarily. And in fact, this temporary could be somewhere from 2 years to 20 years. Because one of my students, my prologue for my chapter was on a case study of one of my students who gave the testimony that out of 10 kids, he was the youngest. His father left for the States when he was born, and his father came back after 20 years, or rather after 18 years, to die. This is not Australian to die. It's literally to die because he got a stroke. And so his father came home, and he, at 18 to 20 years old, had to take care of his father. And he was so angry at his dad, because he was saying the things that his dad never did to him, like take care of him, bathe him, do all these things. He was the one who was doing it for his dad. So that's the state of a lot of our Filipino youth. And this is available at Amazon. You have Kindle, and of course paperback. So we said, why Youth Ministry for Life? Because of the youth, but also because of you. So you have a heart for the youth. I'm sure of that. You understand them. Okay. Probably we understand them more than their parents do at this point. You are capable of discipling them. You're already doing that. You have unlimited resources. And I always say this to, generation starting with maybe X and then Y, Z. I say, you have no excuse not to be creative. You have no excuse because you have all these resources at your fingertips, unlimited. Um, Pinterest pa lang, no? Just Pinterest, go anywhere, and you have all these resources, and a lot of them are free. So there's no reason not to be creative, to do things out of the box, to be able to minister to the young people. And you can be a professional youth minister for life. If before in the Philippines, especially, youth ministers were like part-timers, many times volunteers, no, what do you call this? No love gift, no honorarium, and sometimes we even have to shell out money when our youth say, "Uy, pa-burger naman, kuya ate." A burger. And so we're the ones who do this when we have our discipleship meetings at Starbucks or McDonald's or wherever, that we're the ones who are actually shelling out. So you can be a professional youth minister for life. And that is actually one of the burdens of AGS when we first started, that we will professionalize youth ministry, that youth ministers will have the same status as other real real professional ministers, that we are not just going to be second rate, and youth ministry is not going to be a stepping stone for becoming a senior pastor or senior minister, but that you could be even a youth minister even up to age 60 or more. And another professor we had at AGS, visiting professor, I'm sure Colin has heard of him, Leslie Christie. Oh, that guy is just like one. I don't know, Alvan, if he was your professor. If Dan was energetic, I don't know how to describe Les. He's like,
Short, right? Yeah, I think
he
so.
could hardly catch his breath when he's talking because he's so excited. But he also gave the testimony that he was a youth pastor, and when the senior pastor left, but automatically the youth pastor is promoted, to become the senior pastor. He said, if you're going to do that, then I resign, because I want to stay in youth ministry. So that really gave us a model, and that really encouraged us to be youth ministers for life, to be professionalized. And when I'm asked to recommend like youth pastors, my students, and when I'm talking with the senior pastor of the church or the board, whatever, I always, because Filipinos, Colin, we're shy about, so how much is my salary going to be? We're shy about that. So I'm the one who asked them, so how much are you going to give this guy? Okay, be sure it's going to be, something that can feed his family. He needs to survive with his family. So that's one way also of professionalizing. And of course, professionalizing by being further equipped and in youth ministry. So this is one way also to segue actually to AGS, but I'd like to talk about resources. I wrote this is an adaptation, Experiencing God, Asian Youth Edition. It's an adaptation of Henny Blackaby's book, which is 12 lessons. This one is 6 lessons. There's an English, there's a Tagalog, one of this. And then also Extreme Disciplines. There are 2 volumes, volume 1 and 2, and they both have a leader's manual as well as a youth manual. They're both available at Lazada and Shopee. Oh, and another one, this one is from UK. Fraser Key is from the UK. And again, this is a group of 11 youth ministers from all over the world. So we all had, rather than having one chapter with a different topic for each author, we all wrote, 11 of us, on all these topics, like the foundations, our background, how we got to youth ministries, about organizing ourselves, about young people, about relationships. So that was the common thread, but from different perspectives. Also available at Amazon. And so now talking about youth ministry at Alliance Graduate School, we're about 20 years old already. We started in 1997, and I was one of the first belonged to the first batch. It's a 2-year course. And my brother was a youth minister at the time in the US, in LA. And when he saw the roster of professors, he was going, Paul Borthwick, Les Christie, Mark Clamport, who else, Alan Jackson, all these guys. And he was saying, David Rand. Okay, they're all authors, they're speakers at conferences. And my brother was saying, you can't get, here in the States, you can't get all these professors in one place. So you are so blessed to have all these professors here. And so youth studies, this is an MA program, and we cater to those who are full-time, part-time youth ministers, whether you're in the context of a church, community, or school. And we have, maybe I could send this to the Converge, I post it there. And these are our strengths that we have, our faculty, our experience. And it's a ministry rather than entertainment approach. And also we have a balanced curriculum, balancing theories, as well as praxis. And of course, we also integrate theology, sociology, and psychology. And we have different formats. We do have the regular semestral format, but we also have modular formats, especially when we have visiting professors from abroad. And our materials are, although we use a lot of times, of course, we have visiting professors from abroad, but these are adaptable to the Filipino and Asian context. Okay, so this time, maybe some of you be asking, do we have online classes? Yes, everything is online now. And at first, maybe about 5 years ago, people from abroad, Dubai, from Europe, other places were asking youth ministry, counseling, other programs, if we offer online classes. And many of us are the boomer generation. Some of them are older than me, believe it or not. So we were saying, we can't do that. We don't know how to do that. So on one hand, the pandemic was a blessing in disguise because we were forced. We were forced to learn how to go online. And it happened at a time where in March, classes were ending. So we had the whole of summer to learn tutorials on YouTube, to practice, to do things so that by the time first semester came last school year, we were ready to be able to do our online classes. And when we have Lord willing, when we have face-to-face classes again, we will still have our online classes, maybe a hybrid of sort, or what one of our visiting professor, Paul Kelly, says. He says he has peeper students, like he has a regular class and he has something set up where these people from other countries or other cities could be able to join in the classes, do something like that. So schedules, we're trying to do our major subjects during the evenings because we know that there are professionals working during the day and are only free in the evenings. And this time though, we are transitioning to an ecclesiastical graduate MA in youth ministry. And that is because there's so many requirements from CHED, from different groups that are accreditation groups that have, added so many units, so many subjects that I feel are not really that needed, like statistics. My students are suffering from statistics class. So we did a shorter program because many of the youth ministers actually who do enroll are not supported by their churches. It's if ever, it's the senior pastors, right, who are supported by their churches. So the youth ministers, many of them go on their own, study on their own. And since they only are special students, so they don't have full-time units, what happens is they cannot apply for scholarship as well. So we try to make it shorter, the program shorter. It will be ecclesiastical. In other words, it's not going to be CHED recognized. So you would not be able to use it like, for instance, when you apply in a school that's CHED recognized and say that you're going to teach this or that. But it is, you could do it for campus ministry, working with the youth themselves, but not like applied to a school in that context. But of course, church and then community, well, we're doing that. So we're trying this for this year to do it, to transition to the ecclesiastical studies. Okay, so these are the youth workers of the Alliance Youth Metro Manila. And we meet every Christmas and have new t-shirts. That's the youth ministry thing, right? If there's an event, there needs to be a t-shirt. So anyway, I have a suitcase full of them. But I show this picture because when I started youth ministry full-time, I was at the ripe of old age of 32. And usually youth ministers are in their 20s. And when Len Kegler from NIAC, he was also our professor, also Alvin's professor, he was doing a research of, I think, the salaries of youth ministers from all over the world. And so he asked me, how many youth ministers do you have in Metro Manila? what are their salaries. And that was like in the 90s. And I joke you not, I could count them on my fingers, the youth ministers of the Alliance in Metro Manila, the full-time ones. Oh no, not even full-time, because some were what I call the slash youth ministers. So youth ministry slash music minister, youth ministry slash Christian education. They were not full-time. So when I asked about their salary, I was even more sad, especially among the Alliance. It's like, what? It was really, really way below poverty level. So there was only a few youth ministers, but now, because we are professionalizing youth ministers, and of course among the Alliance, you can see that more and more are being equipped for youth ministry. Some who are leaving their professional jobs, we have engineers. One time, one batch, I had like 4 engineers. Another batch, I had like 4 nurses, who have left their jobs and are going full-time for youth ministry. So this is very encouraging to see that we have, young ones. I said, I can now retire because we have young ones to take our place in youth ministry. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Anne. Again, we're just so honored that you could be here and to give
So
this.
good.
I believe that more than that, some of these guys, we're not the young guys anymore. We believe in youth ministry, but I think they have a lot of questions regarding that. So maybe we could spend a little more time, like if you guys have, things to ask Anne, and then, it doesn't have to be answered definitively, but maybe, what are the things that are, when we talk about this topic, what comes to mind? What are your questions?
I actually wrote several questions here, so I hope you won't mind. First off, Anne, thank you so much. It's wonderful to hear what you're doing, and man, I'm just really drooling with envy. Like what you guys are doing with, a future for youth ministry, especially the word professionalizing the program. Um, can I ask in that area, how are you now in that um, in that sense? Since you said you wanted the youth ministry to be more professionalized, where are you now as a movement um, in that particular direction?
Yes, I'm happy to say that like among my students, when they graduate and they report to me, so they're hired as youth ministers. So more and more churches are actually hiring youth ministers, not just like depending on those who would volunteer, and
Right,
many
right.
professionals who already have their full-time jobs, and then on top of that would have to minister during the weekend. So we see more and more youth ministers who are hired by churches, and they're also given ample salary. In fact, one of my students who was being hired in, I won't mention the church, our church is in Mexico. I said, oh no, your salary is bigger than mine as a
Oh,
seminary.
wow.
Maybe I should apply for that. But just kidding aside. Yeah.
I'm more qualified, I think. Can I have the church then?
Yes, yes.
You can find it. But I do think just to add on to this topic of we do want youth ministers to be paid, but I think, and I've seen this in different groups, like the norm is like 1 or 2 get really good salaries, but then for the majority, like across a denomination, they're paid literally close to 0 sometimes. So I mean, praise God for the victories, but I think we really need to continue to see how we can, make more people
Right.
live in these times with that.
And part of it is
Wait.
educating the churches as well. So let them see that youth ministry is not just, we're not babysitting your kids. We're not glorified babysitters. We're doing discipleship. And when we're playing like this online games with them, or there was at one time, I don't know if you know her, one of our professors at AGS, professors, I think Grace Zumbilio. I would be considered more sporty or a little more techy, but she's like very prim and proper. But she played Counter Strike with her youth. I said, I don't even play that. But when we do play games with them, when we're out there hanging out with them, that's actually work. That's ministry, and we have to show our leaders, church leaders, that it's not just sitting at the desk. Because another youth pastor student of mine, he was required to be in the office 5 days a week from 8 to 5. So it was hard for him to like explain that I need to go to where they are. I can't be stuck here in the office because I need to go to where. So I think partly educating the youth leader, rather the leaders of the church, the members, that what comprises youth ministry or the work that a youth minister does. So that's part also of professionalizing it, that you don't, that leaders, members don't look down on youth ministers, that they're just playing, it's just all fun and games, it's just all retreats and camps, but it's actually hard work. It's often tiring work. Yes.
Right, right. Another question, just guys, just come and ask your questions also. But I do have a lot, so like, let me
Sure.
just jump into
Maybe you should go.
many of you. I know. It should be talking over coffee. Um, one of the things, like, you are in a graduate school, and but and yet I would assume you are not the national youth director, but perhaps like in, but then there are churches, especially Alliance here. You're huge, right? You're all over the country. I remember I went down to one of a town down south in Mindanao, and there were more Alliance churches than barangays. I was like astounded with that, like, wow, like, and and I even got to join their huge meeting. So, but what I'm also saying is, I'm asking is, with as a seminary, and how is it also be like your graduates? How are they being embraced in churches, or is there kind of like, since they are now being so quite like professionalized, is there also kind of a drawback with that?
Yes, they are being hired. As I said earlier, they're being hired as youth ministers, and some of them do stay, prefer not to be promoted to like a higher position, like senior pastors. That they have also embraced this concept of being youth ministry for life. Although on one hand, I do tell the guys, especially those who get married and have kids, I said I can understand that if you do, if you are tempted to become a senior pastor when you're considering like your family, right? How are you going to support them? Because like for myself, even if I had a part-time job only that time when I started, but then of course my husband is there who could support the family. So it's easy for me maybe to say youth ministry for life. But then we can see now that churches are really seeing the need of having full-time youth pastors, and also willing to pay to be able to give that salary that they deserve for them. And so when you're talking about the National Alliance Youth, yes, it's a huge thing, and more, even in Mindanao, more and more also, not just in the cities, we also have churches that are really hiring youth pastors, and they see the need for full-time youth pastors.
That is very encouraging. That is very encouraging. Um, uh, Another question I have is, did you mentioned ecclesiastical? Did you mean to say that you also moved out from the CHED recognized program, or the CHED recognized program is there, and you also have the ecclesiastical?
Right
And
now, because yeah.
and the second, connected to that question then, is how much? Because and are you open to have students coming not from Alliance background?
Oh, most of our students are non-alliance ever since.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Okay, I will get it promoted to our group.
Alvin has been taking some subjects there. Actually, yes. Most of our students are non-alliance. And what was the question before that? I'm sorry.
About ecclesiastical and like the move
Okay.
towards ecclesiastical.
So we're transitioning now. We still have the MA, the CHED recognized. New students can still choose to have that track. And then the others are choosing the newer curriculum. So it's kind of like we're testing it now. If there's a need to do away completely, maybe with the MA, unless there's a a call for that. But what happened is, since youth ministry per se is not really like directly CHED recognized, it has to be subsumed. We subsumed it under pastoral studies. And then eventually what happens is, since it's pastoral studies, then pastoral studies adds pastoral studies subjects. So, instead of having like 62 units, you end up with a lot more units. And some of my students who graduate from youth ministry, they take additional, I think, 12 units after they graduate of pastoral studies, so that it would be CHED recognized. Yeah. Oh, also, because not all our Bible schools have what we call special order or SO. A lot of our Bible schools don't have CHED recognition. So it would be useless also for them to take an MA that has CHED recognition. So it's okay to have the ecclesiastical degree.
Right, right. And then, so how much?
How much? Depends how many units you take.
Depends on the unit. Yeah.
I think starting at 15.
How much
15.
knots yung like for one sem, I think.
Depends on the
Yeah.
units. Like
Yeah,
if it's
yeah, like,
two subjects, I could also send the tuition fee schedule.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, wonderful. Wow. Last question. You
I feel
mentioned
like
about
I'm
the
thinking I'm defending. Just kidding.
No,
For
no,
the proposal.
no, because I'm very interested.
Sure.
One thing that really got me interested is that this is also really, one thing that for our group we wanted to get into. And so even right now I'm thinking even of so when you were like presenting, I wanted to like what if we can also send our students, sponsor one or two of our youth to study there, and that will be, I'm really keen on doing that. That's why I have a lot of questions.
Sure.
Another thing is you mentioned about the salary, and then because Alvan, remember this, we were in Bohol, and I did ask some of our youth pastors how much salary are they receiving, and it even went down to as low as 1,500, 2,000 a month. That would be what in dollars, $20 or $25 a month. And then but average wise, that was like around 4,000 pesos, or what, $100 a month. So in your study, was that also the norm?
Yeah, that time. That was like in the 90s.
Oh,
This one
It's
that we
like
did
that
was
was your 90s. I'm
2019.
talking of 2010s.
2019.
I'm talking of 2020.
I haven't asked lately, but um, more or less, in 20 plus thousand city pastors. So not that far from senior pastors. Because before, you have senior pastor up here, and then in fact, in one organizational chart, one of my classmate, where's he, my classmate, said that in their organizational chart in their church, he was like at the same level like with the janitors and the ganon. So senior pastor, associate pastors, blah blah. Then here he was on this line, and that's how youth pastors were viewed before. So we want to, not so much like to say that we're that important, or because sometimes that's what also discourages people to be youth ministers for life, because they're thinking, they have to be practical, especially if they're going to have a family. So how would they support their family? So they would opt for to be a minister, then maybe senior pastor, associate pastor, but never never a youth pastor, or just temporarily a pastor. And another thing is the wrong idea of Filipinos. I don't know in the States if that happens, is that when somebody is a new graduate, an intern, or a new graduate from Bible school, then automatically they're the youth pastors, whether they have the burden for youth ministry or not. But the thing is, these young ones sometimes have old souls, and they're the ones who cannot actually cope with young people. So Debbie here was asking me about how I cope with youth culture as I advance in age, and that is, the struggle is real, Debbie. The struggle is very real because when you talk about youth culture, there's so many facets of youth culture. There's the music, there's the language, there's the food, there's the fashion, sports, hobbies, all kinds of things there. And so what we usually do in youth culture, I've done ever since in youth culture class is get experts, or people to talk about it. And then there was one time my students said, since they're experts themselves, they said, so why don't we be the ones to do the research, and we'll be the ones to report in class. So and they have fun doing that, and I also learn a lot from them. But like maybe some topics like postmodernism, then I get I get other experts to do that. So it's very interesting. Youth culture is very interesting. And it's not like during my generation where youth culture changes about every 5 years. Now it's like maybe every 5 months. I don't know. Cell phones themselves, the TikToks and all these challenges, fashion. It's so fast. It's so fast. And it's hard to keep up. At one point, I tried when I started in the 90s, I tried to be expert to focus on movies because I love movies. So I would be that was my expertise when it came to youth culture. But now it's, well, there's so much out there. Netflix pa lang, no, when you're trying to see what you want to watch. After 1 hour, you end up not watching anything because there's so many choices. There's so many out there, not just Western, American, or Filipino movies. You have the Bollywood. You have, of course, other Asian movies. So I don't know. I don't think I'm an expert anymore. I'm an expert in facilitating and getting the experts to talk about it. But I try to keep up. Language, youth language, so hard to keep up at this age. Yeah. Thank you for that question. But at AGS, anyway, as professors, we're more of facilitators, especially in youth ministry. Maybe not so, maybe other professors are more of experts than I am. But like in youth ministry, as facilitators, we have the resources not only of our own resources, but as well as the students. And then we also facilitate to guide them where they could get other resources. So it's a collaborative work. There's discussion, question and answer, and it's very lively. Youth ministry classes are always lively and fun. Thank you for that question.
Ayan, baka kailangan magbigay ng enrollment link at saan?
Yes, yes.
Ongoing pa yung
For special youth students up to June 30. So for special students, you could have as many as 3 subjects. You'll be allowed 3 subjects.
And then
so
I remember there was an option for audit before. I don't know if that's still possible.
Yes. But the problem now with our audit, before kasi when we offer audit classes where you don't do the requirements, you just enroll the class, you don't get credit for it, it would cost 1,000 less than the regular. But now it's the same price, so you might as well get it for credit. Sayang, no? And who knows, no? I have students before where they thought they would just take this one subject or this one, and they end up enrolling. And since they took it for audit the last time, then sayang, but they didn't do the requirements, they didn't get the credit for it. So who knows?
All right. Thank you, Ats. And thank you for the guys who, I think Aaron has a question that has not yet been addressed. He was asking about, I think this is more of, I guess, a link that he's asking for. Pastor Aaron, is that right?
Maybe development on the course, something like related to COVID.
Yeah.
How youth ministry would look like after this, if they have an integrated, if we enroll right now, or if there's a special topic about that.
As of now, wala pa, because we already have our about 18 to 19 units of our major subjects and then some electives. But right now, wala pa kaming like digital evangelism or post-COVID, ministry, or doing ministry, in fact, during COVID times. But I've been asking people, those who have been doing it or have the resources, to offer webinars. My son is a pastor in Angeles. He's the lead pastor in Angeles. And for 1 year they did have kids ministry because their children's what do you call this, like teachers are boomers, no, although they are teachers, school teachers, but they're boomers. And so my son has been doing on, he's very techy, he's been doing online church. It's just him and his wife who does the techie part as well, so it's just them. But then to do the kids ministries, he did have people who knew, like the teachers, how to do it. So I got I don't know, Alban, if you know Samantha Salazar. So among the alliance here in Metro Manila, I saw they had a successful kids ministry. It's ala batibot. It's really, it's fun. It's not just, it's of course some are doing like Zoom where they have like Sunday school Zoom, but this one is more like batibot. It's like the junior church or kids church. So there are segments of like music or singing, some games, artwork or craft, and then the lesson, and then it's like a variety show, no?
Yeah,
Because kids, as we know, have very short attention span, and so she's done that, and I've asked her to teach my son's teachers in Angeles. So she'll be having like a sort of like a tutorial. And I asked my son, it would be nice to have our pastors also have a webinar, how to do the OBS thing, how to do FB Live, because our pastors in different places, no, are not able to also have their online churches or how to do it properly because they don't know how to do it. So things like that. And we've also been talking about digital evangelism. So I have a student where he was also asking me actually, Aaron, about this. So I said maybe it would be good to offer them as webinars. Maybe Alvan, this group would have resources, would have resource persons to also do that and offer these kinds of webinars because they're needed. They're very much
yes,
needed.
we actually have one of our prime resources is Indigitus. They actually on our page they've been advertising about. I think like the focus has been for like the past year digital evangelism, and then of course yes, marami silang iba't ibang strat. Again, that's one of the things that's on offer. Sports ministry also had like something geared towards that, but I think Indigitus has more focused on that strategy. So we could actually invite them sometime in the future. But yeah,
or if they're willing to be our resource persons, like to have a module or something at AGS, that would also be
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. That was actually collaborations are actually one of the things that I've been on my mind lately with Converge. Like we wanna be celebrating and advocating more of these things. So would love to see that set up somehow, and with other groups as well. Like most of the guys here are connected to different denominations, and there could be some talk around that line of what could we do together.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I second that.
All right, so I think that's it. Again, thank you so much, Atsan. For more of this, again, we have a Discord, we have a group, network, social network that you can ask questions there directly if you need to with Atsan. So this conversation doesn't have to end here. And of course, this is also recorded. We'll try to find a space where we can put it. And I'll stop the recording now.